Clementine Moss. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much, Rich. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have this conversation with you. You are the only other female drummer that I know and have met. Stephanie Eulenberg, that plays for Kid Rock, is the only other drummer that I know.
Oh, she's a great drummer. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a wonderful drummer. Yeah,
So I'm looking forward to this conversation very much.
great. Me too.
Let me give a brief introduction here for you so the
Sure.
audience gets a feel for who you are before we dive into the conversation.
Great.
You're the founding drummer of Zeparella. You formed and perform with Zeparella, an all-female led Zeppelin tribute band, active since 2004. You're the author From Bonham to Buddha and Back, The Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer, which is a memoir that explores your journey balancing hard rock drumming and spiritual practice. You're a multidisciplinary musician and creator. Beyond the drums, you write songs, sing, record, and release original music. Example of that being your album Clem and Clear Light, combining rock, folk, and introspective styles. You're a spiritual counselor and healer, trained in multiple spiritual and healing modalities, applied shamanism, depth hypnosis practitioner. You're a non denominational minister, certificate in contemplative psychotherapy from Nalanda Institute, and you're a master of morphic awakening energetic healing technique. You weave these practices into your life and your creative work as well. You are a contributor and voice in the field of music and spirituality through blogging with the blog Bliss and Drumming. You're a magazine contributor and modern drummer, and other interviews and your work in and with Sacred Stream. You help bridge the worlds of artistic performance and inner transformation. That's quite a dichotomy, I would say, of delving into the hard rock world and then also spirituality. I find that very fascinating. But as I mentioned in before we started recording here, I don't have a whole lot of structure to this other than my very first question. And that just takes us back in time to where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Clementine?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for reading all of that stuff. Yeah, I know it's I have a lot of different sides, definitely. Should have been born a Gemini, I guess. Um let's see. I was born in Anaheim, California. And I lived a very middle class, happy life. Two parents, a sister who's 3 years younger than me, and then I had a sister who was born when I was 16. But my early life was really the four of us, and yeah, just I loved school. I loved reading. That was kind of my whole thing, was like reading and writing and school stuff. I just loved it, and I played music, but played piano and sang in the choir and played the flute, but I didn't really focus that much on music. I didn't find the drums until I was in my late 20s.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't start playing drums as a youngster. My nephew right now is 16 years old, and he's getting the good education of jazz band and orchestra and marching band, and I just admire him so much, for and wish that, at that point that had been an option for me, because I think I would have really thrived in that. But
Yeah.
yeah, drumming wasn't a part of my life at all at that point. I really saw myself as a writer, and somebody who is, going to go kind of follow a school. I just imagined I'd probably end up being a professor at some point. That was kind of my path that I chose pretty early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have a little bit of a connection to Anaheim.
Mm,
I have two cousins, actually, father and son, who played professional baseball.
mm.
Clyde Wright is the father, and he
Uh-huh.
has a pitching school with the California Angels.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he pitched professionally for quite a few years. He's one of the few that has a no hitter on his
Oh,
record.
wow.
Um, Playing with I believe it was when he was playing with California, and then his son Jarrett went on to play professional ball as well as a pitcher
Uh-huh.
uh,
Wow.
with Cleveland and Atlanta. Uh,
Wow, that's really cool.
they're
Yeah,
out
I've
in
I've
Anaheim.
been to many, many Angel games when I was a teenager and lots of Dodger games. In fact, I just with my family just went to a Dodger game. We realized my husband had never been to Dodger Stadium
Oh wow!
and when I say something like that to my family, like the next thing you know, there's a party bus going to Dodger Stadium with a whole lot of people. So we all kind of
Yeah.
trucked down to the Dodger game. Dodgers lost, but it was so lovely to be there. You know, it was a real big memory. Baseball was it was really the only sport that I played with any enthusiasm. I played a
Really?
little bit of soccer, but softball was kind of my sport when I was my team sport when I was a kid. And yeah, so baseball, we would go to the Dodger game and have our fielding caps on and our batting helmets, and we'd switch off and we had our Dodger pin and our Dodger scorecard. And we would, which my sister was just saying at the game, she's like, gosh, Dad was so smart to like give us something to do while we were there,
Right.
to so that he could watch the game in peace and not get bugged by us.
For
So
sure.
yeah, it's baseball is wonderful. Yeah, in Anaheim, my grandmother and grandfather, my mom's parents lived a mile from Disneyland. And so my mom is the oldest of nine, and all nine kids worked at Disneyland at some point. And
Wow.
yeah, including my mom. And we would watch the every night at 9:30 they have the fireworks go off. And so in the summertime, that was, we spent a lot of evenings in the backyard of my grandmother's house watching Disneyland fireworks. Yeah, Disney was like a really, really big deal for my family at that
Yeah.
time. So, yeah, so that says a lot about the positivity that my family kind of carries with it, and
Yeah. For
everybody in my
sure.
family is really are very positive people. So,
Yeah. I only got to see the Disney World fireworks on TV at the
mhm.
beginning of every one of those movies.
Oh, right, that's right, that's right,
And then Tinkerbell coming in and, you know,
that's right.
waving her wand.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, in comparison to, I played soccer, but basketball was my other sport. I never
Basketball.
really got too much into baseball or softball.
Yeah,
Did
yeah,
play a
but
little,
both,
not a whole lot.
yeah, both my sisters were big soccer stars. In fact, I think my younger sister, I think, was on like the farm team for the Olympics at one point.
Oh, wow.
My other sister was, I think she was the leading player in her division in her whatever role she was playing. What do you call that? Anyway, at some point in all of California. So they were both, and my father he coached soccer. So soccer
Really?
was super
Okay.
big deal in my family. Yeah. And I missed that. I hated running. And it was right around the time when they started all getting really into soccer where I was like, everybody else could be sporty and I'm going to read a book. Like you guys all go
Right.
do
Yeah.
sports and I'm going to read the book, which is still the case. They're all very sporty, and I tell them when they're speaking about sports to me, it's like that thing in Peanuts where the adults are talking, and it's like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah." Like I'm happy
For
for you that you
sure.
dig it, but I don't need to hear about
Yeah, exactly.
it.
Did your father, did he coach soccer full time or did he have another job as
He had
well?
another job. Yeah. My dad was the kind of guy who, he loved being a father. And so he would wake up at 4 in the morning and get to work super early so that he could be out of work by 2 or 3 in the afternoon so he could get to everybody's practices and get to be able to coach. So yeah, it was really important to him. He loved it. And actually, even after both of my sisters were out of it, he continued to coach. He loved it that much. So yeah,
Oh, very cool.
yeah.
Was the work that he did, was it in any creative field at all?
No, my dad was his dad worked for a lumber company, and then my dad worked for a lumber company. My dad started off working at 12 as like sweeping up the lumber company at the lumber yard, and then started as a truck driver. Then went to a truck driver when I was born. He was a truck driver, and then from there he went into salesman, and then
Okay.
from there he went into management and ended up being kind of the head of that company for a number of years.
Gotcha. How about mom? Was she stay-at-home mom or did she work as well?
She was a stay-at-home mom until I was about 14 years old, 14. Yeah, 14 years old. And then she started working for the school district. She
Okay.
worked as, I think she was like an assistant teacher in the special education department. And then she went into the office at the school district. And then she ended up being the head administrator at my high school. I was gone
Okay.
by then, but she, which is basically like kind of the secretary to the principal and handling everything. So yeah, and then she ended up after my mom's current husband, he was the principal and she was the secretary. This was after my dad died, and he
Hmm.
left, and then a few years later they ended up connecting again, and they've been married now for 15 years or something like that. Yeah, I
Wow.
know. Kind of a really neat story. Yeah.
It's a synchronistic story for sure.
I know. That's great.
How about grandparents? Did they have any creativity that flowed and trickled down?
Yeah. So, my dad's family, not so much, but my mom's parents. So, my mom's dad I think he's one of, I believe it's seven, and they are from Wisconsin. Both of her parents were from Wisconsin. She was born in Wisconsin. And every one of his siblings is a musician. And he was considered the singer. He was like the baby of the thing. One of his, and I didn't know this until I think maybe even 5 years ago. I didn't know this, but one of his brothers had a big band, was a drummer, and had a big band in New York that would play in New York, and he was a big band leader in like the 30s and 40s. So, when I started playing drums, I just thought it was this weird anomaly, that I didn't know that
Yeah.
I had, any relatives with musical stuff. And then I found out all of this, that there's all this stuff on his side of the family. And then
Right.
my grandmother was a singer for a little while. I mean, I think she sang for a few shows with Benny Goodman at one point. And so there was a lot of music around. My dad was like the ultimate rock and roll lover. Like there was always music. He always had the best stereo. They would go to see the Stones and Elton John, and he loved the blues. And so that's music that I grew up with. My grandmother and my grandfather, they were really into like the 30s and 40s kind of stuff. And my mom knows like the lyric to all of those songs. So we were always singing those kind of big band kind of songs. So there was a lot of music around, but it wasn't like people were playing music. It was like we were really just listening to it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
In school or in elementary, were you one of those students that would want to sit towards the back of the room and not really be noticed, or were you one that was interested in being up front and wanted a bit of that attention of the teacher?
I it's funny, about 15 years ago I got really into taking a class in sewing,
Okay.
and in San Francisco here, and there were like 10 people in the class or something. And in that class, I reconnected to my younger self because I realized that I was the one who had to be done first, who had to raise her hand first, who had to sit at the front of the class. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I am that person. I need to be the teacher's pet. I need to be the one, like, I need to sit right up front. I need to be the one that when the teacher has to go out of the room, she says, Clem, go ahead and just, keep track of everything while I leave the room. Right. I mean, I had to be that person, but, it really was not in a way that I felt like I needed to be special. It was just that I was so excited about learning. I just
Yeah.
really, really, I just wanted information. I loved school. I loved reading and I just loved learning. I wanted as much information all the time as I could. I'm still that way. I love learning. I love taking classes and learning new things. Yeah.
Would you characterize yourself then as an achiever at that point?
I was an achiever. Yes, definitely. I mean, I think
Okay.
I just wanted to, if there was something that was presented to me, I felt like I just wanted to see if I could do it in that way. Yeah. Mhm. I
Okay.
think sports was the first time where I was like, oh, this is something that I don't really like and I'm not that really that good at. And I was, kind of started pushing that kind of stuff away. I think
Mhm.
that was really the place where I did that. Everything else, it's like, oh, you can run for student body president. You can, be in the play. You can be in in the choir. You can apply to this, whatever, you know what I mean? Like anything that was presented, I just felt like I had to do it. Yeah.
How about friends? Was it very easy for you to engage with friends? And did you have quite a few, or did you become very selective at that age in terms of the friends that you had?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I always had really great friends. I really liked having like a core tribe, you
Yeah,
know. At
yeah,
that time, I remember I feel like I had like four, like we were in a little pack of four or five. And, later on when I joined rock bands, I was like, oh, this is very familiar to me, to
right,
be in this like tribe of four or three, felt really comfortable to me.
sure.
Um, I think that I don't think that, I think I can be a little aloof and think I can be quick to judge. I think that's some things that I work on not letting go of those qualities in myself. So I'm not my sister is the kind of person who, she's the ultimate extrovert where she has, you go to Thanksgiving at her house, there's 45 people, you know. I say, well, let's go to let's go to the Dodger game. There's like 25, a bus of 25 people. Like that's her, right? And
Okay,
I'm not really like that as much. I think I like a core group a little bit more.
right.
Yeah.
What order? How did you
I'm
fall in
I'm
terms of
oldest. Yeah, I'm
your
oldest.
oldest?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
got you.
yeah. Yeah. What about you? Do you have that? Are you
I have a very interesting scenario in terms of where I sit with my siblings.
uh-huh.
I have an older sister who's 7 years older,
Oh, yeah.
but she was from my dad's first marriage.
Hmm.
Um, and so realistically, she's a half sister, but I've never considered her that. I just always considered my sister.
Hmm.
Um, so when my parents got married, they moved up here to Michigan because my dad was a mechanic. And so back in the 60s, you know, mechanic in East Tennessee didn't really have a huge opportunity to make decent money and consistent money. So
Yeah.
they came up here to Detroit where the auto industry is, and
Hmm.
he had ample opportunity. So that was kind of the strange scenario there because she lived with her mom the
Hmm.
whole time. So I would only get to see her whenever we'd go down there on vacation or holidays and stuff like that. So I was almost like the only child for
Hmm. Hmm.
years of my life. And then they decided we're going to try and have another one. And I had another sister who's 9 years younger.
Oh, wow. It's like a
Stretched.
family of only children in a way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
But from the perspective of an achiever, I was definitely an achiever when it came to athletics or creative things.
Uh-huh.
But otherwise, I didn't want any light shown on me whatsoever. I would
Uh,
rather fade into the background so that I could just observe everything,
right.
watch what's going on, see how people acted, see how they interacted. I was very sensitive as a
Uh-huh.
kid and still am to this day, but I'm finding my way into a place of being comfortable with having a little bit of attention and speaking with people and different things like that. Otherwise, I'd just be quiet all day
It's
long.
great that you're pushing yourself in the way of being in a podcast. Yeah, that's
Yeah, this
yeah,
I could have never guessed I would be doing this in a million years, even
yeah,
2 years ago. So
right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Are you Cancer?
I am not. I'm a full-on Capricorn.
Oh, Capricorn. Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. So you're very organized.
right at the end of December, December 28th, my rising sign is a Capricorn as well. So
Mm.
I'm fully in it.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, we
The
have it in Zeparella, we have two Capricorns and two Aries.
Oh,
So we
okay.
have a lot of energy and then we
Yeah,
have a lot of structure to put that energy into.
sure. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Did you have a sense early on as a kid that you were drawn to spiritual things? And I'm not necessarily thinking about religious things at that
Hmm.
point. I'm thinking about things that are spiritual, maybe having a heightened perception of things early on as a kid.
Hmm. I did. Yeah, I did. I feel like looking back, I feel like I was able to access ecstatic, a
Okay.
feeling of ecstatic things, especially around nature. And then because of literature, I always loved when I loved those big ideas, those big picture kind of ideas in literature. And I didn't know at the time that I was really drawn to stories about like Eastern philosophy or Eastern spirituality. But
Mhm.
looking back, I see how much those stories really affected me. So I felt myself always a seeker. Like I said, I just loved to
Yes.
learn. So I was always like just really interested in the way that culture saw things. And I was raised Catholic and went to, the CCD, and my mom was Catholic, my dad was an atheist, and I really identified, I think, more with my father when I was younger. And so I had a heightened skeptical side
Yeah.
around religion,
Mhm.
because of his he didn't push that. He was always like, go to church with your mom.
Yeah.
But I just, you feel that. And so I feel like I was very skeptical. So I felt like I learned, like, in there, I learned like the golden rule, which I thought, this seems like the thing,
Yeah.
like this is it. And then as, you go through and you start studying and you realize all of the things that don't mesh with that, in the stories, you're like, but wait a minute, I thought it was like do unto others. And there's all this other stuff going on and all of these things that don't seem to matter to me at all that you're making a big deal about.
Mhm.
Then I pretty early on realized, okay, I think what I want to do is I want to take the best out of everything I study. And to me, the best was about empathy and about treating others as you would treat them, as you would want to be treated, and also being in service in some way, being somebody who is able to help when possible, that you should help.
For
I've
sure.
been thinking a lot about that lately, about looking in the world and wondering where empathy is, in a lot of what I see. And I remember being taught when I was in, I went to public school, and I remember being taught from a really early age, doing these practices where, when you speak harshly to somebody, then like feel how it feels to be spoken harshly to, and how your body doesn't feel good. And then now feel how good it feels when speak when somebody says something nice to you, and how nice that feels in your body. And so now just imagine that everything you say affects other people in that way. Like I remember being taught that, and
Yeah.
I just assumed that was the way that we all functioned, right? And I'm realizing with shock, in a shocking and a lot of ways that shock me, how that isn't the basic understanding that a lot of people are coming from, and
Yeah.
I'm heartbroken for them because I feel it's such a beautiful way to live in the world and it feels light. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally understand.
yeah.
I went to public school up until fourth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, my parents put me into a private fundamental Baptist Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in that environment, even into a little bit of college. But I always felt as if I was only getting part of the truth
Mm-hmm.
with that teachings and stuff like that. It was like, okay, I understand that in my head. I was like, well, what about this? Because I'm not hearing any of these other things that would seem to naturally play into the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I always had that same searching internal guide within
Mm-hmm.
me, just looking for more information because
Yeah,
it just didn't seem to be enough to fill
yeah,
out the full picture.
that's right. Yeah, it feels, I feel like we really know inside of our hearts what
Yes.
feels like truth. You know, love feels like truth, right?
Hmm.
And functioning from a place like anything that obscures that kind of basic vibration of our own love, our own truth. We understand like the goal is to kind of clear that away so that that can be our guiding light as we move forward. And there's a lot that gets in the way of that. And then we get caught up in putting our attention into all of these other things that feel very energized, but honestly
Yeah.
are not, don't lead us back to that stillness, that silence that we know in our hearts. So yeah, I think it's so vital for people, and it sounds like you come about it very naturally to be still within yourself and to connect to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With transitioning from elementary into junior high, did you find that to be a bit shocking in terms of the environment? Because that's an age where everything seems to start to change for,
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the that's where the struggle kind of appears. You know, oh, this is what I'm going to be battling for a long time. You know,
Mhm.
I think that in that those those 2 years were like really spotlit my own insecurities, my own, you know, my I realized that's where I developed that internal self attack, right?
Okay.
You know, that anything that goes wrong in the world, it gets turned back on the self.
Right.
And for that, that always leads to, that can lead to, you know, eating disorders, depression, all of those kind of things, which were battles of mine in my young life. You know, that it showed up in junior high school.
Okay.
Um, I think that's a natural age, especially for girls. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
they say that around the age of 13, you know, 11 is like this great age for kids. And then 12 and 13, girls start to turn in on themselves.
Hmm.
And I think that was very much the case for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And boys start turning on others,
Yeah, that right. Yeah.
you know, acting
Yeah.
out and doing
Yeah.
that. Did with the depression component that you're experiencing, did your parents recognize that at all with you and try to do anything to help out with that during that time?
A lot of what was going on at that time was you know, up until that point, I've been very attached to my father, and then we started separating in that natural way,
Okay.
and it became very contentious between us.
Gotcha.
He was a really strong guy who wanted things his way, and I started to have a problem with that, and so my teenagers were very like I was very there was a lot of friction between me and my father, and with my mother I think there was some friction between my parents at that time as well, which it was just like a very it felt like a very chaotic time in my
Mhm.
family life. So I really did just dive deeper into words and reading and writing. And so I think that they were both in their own thing, going on with their own
Yeah,
thing. And also, my mom was pregnant. She got pregnant when I was 15. That was a whole other thing that was going on.
yeah,
So everybody was kind of in their own little suffering. I think at that
right.
point, I don't think anybody was that particularly happy at that point in my family.
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, so it was a difficult time. I say that and I realize also how, in the grand scheme of things, having worked with people who've gone through, incredibly traumatizing times in their
Yeah,
lives, I say it with a grain of salt. I understand that I was really lucky to kind of go through, but pain is pain. When people suffer, it doesn't matter, the
yeah,
degrees. Everybody
right.
feels suffering.
For sure. Did the writing that you did at that point in time, was it more so stories? Was it lyrics? Was it poetry?
Hmm.
And was that a thing that allowed you to, for sure, cope through that transitory period?
It was, yeah. So from the time I was a sophomore till I was a senior, those 3 years, I was the editor of we had a poetry magazine at my school, and we had the newspaper, the school newspaper. And so I was the editor of both of those things for those 3 years. So I was like really involved in those. And then I took the advanced placement classes in English. We had two different kinds. So that was, I was completely engrossed in those things. And
Mm,
um, for one class, I remember writing 50 sonnets, like Shakespearean sonnets, like this little collection of all of these sonnets. So
wow.
it was like I was really deep in. That's that, ended up taking all of the English classes, even if I didn't need them. I just wanted to, like, I wanted as much information, and it was fun to me. That was what I like to do. So, and then my own writing, it was like, usually it was centered around an essay, but then I would just, yeah, write little stories. I was really into short stories at that time. I liked that way of writing, and lots of poetry. I didn't think about writing lyrics because music was gone by then. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm guessing, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing the opportunity to be an editor on both the newspaper and the magazine.
Hmm.
Um, was there a specific teacher that recognized that talent within you that said, "Hey, I think you would be good at this," or was it something that you just stepped up and said, "I would like to do this, and I think I can handle it."
Yeah, I think it was probably a combination of both. I mean, I loved my teachers. I was very fortunate to have such great teachers. So,
Nice.
both of those teachers in those different classes were really lovely. And, I just had a natural, Aries people are kind of natural leaders, right? They have a lot of energy to make things happen. So it just suited my personality to kind of be in that role, to do those things. But yeah, I had no, I'm very fortunate with my education. Yeah, I had great teachers.
Excellent. Yeah, I've from the stories that I've traveled to so far with the podcast,
Hmm.
uh, it always seems to be that there's um, a teacher that recognizes that creative spark within those individuals and has the inclination and compassion to nurture that,
Hmm.
to move it forward, and recognize too that they're just a little bit different than everyone else that's in the class. So they try to make sure that they're just guiding them
Hmm.
gently along and giving them that information.
Yeah, I feel like I had a lot of that. I had a lot of, and like I said at the beginning, like I always having the teacher like me was always really important. I don't know why, it was like I wanted to do good because I wanted them to be happy with me.
Yeah.
So that's just my relationship with authority, I guess. I wanted them to think that I was doing a good job. So I wanted them to,
Yeah.
I don't know what that is in me, but
Do you think some of that may have come? I know we already identified that you're an achiever. And I know achievers, they have that instinct to want to push forward, do really well with what they're doing,
mhm,
in whatever field it is. And with that comes that instinct of wanting to be recognized.
mhm,
But with what you saw taking place with your parents potentially in junior high, did you
mhm.
see that as a way to get a little bit more of that attention that you may not have been getting during what they had going on?
Rich, I don't know about that because I got a
Okay.
lot of attention from my parents, even though, like I said, everybody was kind of in their own world, but
Yeah.
my parents were the kind of parents which, I think if you had these kind of parents, you won the lottery, which is that
Gotcha. Okay.
we were the center of their world, in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm just incredibly grateful for that. There's something in me that if there was an opportunity to be on stage from the time I was a little tiny kid, I wanted to be on stage. It
Okay.
didn't matter what it was. If I had to give a speech, in junior high school, they said, oh, we need somebody to give the student speech at the end. And the idea of giving, I hated that school. Like, why would I give a speech at the graduation? And yet, because I could be on stage and giving a speech, like I had to do it. It's
Oh,
silly.
okay.
Like it's just
Yeah.
like if there was an opportunity to be on stage, I wanted to be on stage. And but the funny thing is I don't really feel like it's like all about like, oh, look at me and like how great I am. It's more like it just feels fun.
Yeah.
Like it feels like that's kind of just what I wanted to do. Like I don't know that. And even now when I think about, being a drummer and being on stage, and if people are applauding, I don't really even feel like they're applauding necessarily for me. It's more like they're applauding
Yeah.
for the thing, like the whole
Yes.
thing. And like I'm a part of the thing that we're all happy to be
Yeah.
experiencing. So
Yeah.
maybe drumming was kind of a great way for me a great instrument to choose because you are kind of behind everything and you're a big part of it. Like I think maybe I would be really happy if I was an actress, I'd be happy in like, a big group of actors. You know what I mean? Like that kind of
Supporting
thing
those.
or something. Yeah, like that's why I like being in a band or I think
Yeah.
I just liked being a part of it. And so I felt always very comfortable on stage and like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to be,
Right.
but without any real fear of it at all. Even as a little kid, like, oh, there's going to be a talent show. Okay, I got to think of something to do so that I can be up there.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
for sure,
yeah.
I get it. It's y- what I'm saying from the way you're explaining it. It's that interest in that support component. It's
Mm-hmm,
being up there and with all those other people,
mm-hmm,
but it's in this support position, right? And being the drummer is absolutely the support. It's almost like the tone setter,
mm-hmm,
right? You're kicking everything off each song, you're kicking it off, and
mm-hmm,
you've got to keep that beat moving throughout this so it stays consistent and so it just goes out to the
mm-hmm,
rest of the audience. And definitely, many times, the drummer is not the one who's getting the attention.
mm-hmm,
It's usually a guitar player or the singer,
mm-hmm,
that kind of thing. And then, unless there's an opportunity to do a solo or the lead singer is going around and introducing
mm-hmm,
everybody,
mm-hmm.
it's not one of those things that gets pushed up to the forefront of what a band
That's
is
right.
individualized as.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So when I started singing, when I started standing at the front of the stage, that was the first time that I ever had that sense of like a feeling of stage fright of some kind of way or a tension
Interesting.
around that, where I was like, okay, now I'm supposed to be something. Like when I sit down behind the drums, it's like I feel like I'm the most Clem as Clem can be, right? Like that's if you want to know me, then you see me play drums and then you get who I am, right? That's the clearest that you can get of who Clem is when I'm behind the drums. And then being at the front of the stage, it was like, oh, I felt this uncomfortableness because I'm at the front of the stage, you are kind of the center of things. And yet, I think being that feeling like it was all about me is not comfortable. So it was a funny, I had to kind of, and I'm always battling that in some way of like being as authentic as possible at the front of the stage. But then there's that, it's strange when you are like in the spotlight that way to be comfortable
Yeah.
with it. So yeah, um, it's an interesting thing to recognize. And I don't, like I said, I don't tend to really feel like I need a lot of attention. It's more that I just have things I want to express, and in order to express it, and then once it's expressed, I want it to unite us, right? To bring us together. Like that's why I love playing music. We're all in one space, and music waves are moving through all of us at one time, and we're all together. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot there, I think.
As you're getting to the end of high school and thinking about what the future is going to hold after you cross that stage at graduation, are you starting to think about college at all? Or are you thinking, I'm going to go out and do something different?
Now, college is always a goal. My dad was the first person in his family to graduate from a 4-year university and
Okay.
a 4-year state school. And then I was going to be the first one in both sides to go to a university. So it was very important that I go. That was a big goal in my family,
Okay.
that I go to college. So I went to the University of California in Santa Cruz. And I when I went there, I just figured that I was going to be a professor. Like, I was going to be a writer, and in order to be a writer, I had to have a job, and I thought, okay, well then I'll be a teacher. And I didn't have any real big interest in teaching, but it just felt like, okay, well that just feels like probably what I could do.
Natural progression.
Yeah, natural progression. And I could just be in academia. I loved academia so much. And then I got to college, and college for me was honestly, it was a lot more about understanding who I was as a social person than it was about me
Okay.
learning, because I had spent my high school with my nose in books. Like I had a very small group of friends, and we were all united by the classes we took. We were all really studious people. So I wasn't going to parties and all that kind of stuff. So, when I went to college, I really started to be like, understand like, oh, okay, like I'm in the world. Like I can like kind of have this, I don't have just one dimension. I can develop
Right.
who I am. And so, so while I loved, the work that I did in college, after 2 years, I really felt like I want to be in the world. I feel like I've been very sequestered. I feel like I haven't lived. If I'm going to write about the world and write about being in the world, I want to put myself in the world. And so I decided I was going to move to New York. I had friends who were moving there, and so I was going to leave college, but then when I added up all my credits, I realized I only had one more year. Like I could graduate in 3 years because I'd done well on some
Oh, wow.
tests in high school. And so I thought, okay, just stick it out for another year, get your degree, and then go. So then that's what I did. I went to college and then I moved to New York City.
Okay. And was the draw to New York City, was it because of the creativity that you saw
Yes.
there?
Yeah, it was all of my favorite writers, had passed through there or had lived there. And I felt destined to be in New York. It's funny because when I was in fourth grade, my teacher had given me a book about these kids in New York City, and she wrote like, I just have a feeling that someday you're gonna be there, right? Like there's something I felt like I was my destiny to kind of go there. So
Gotcha.
um, yeah, so I moved there and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a writer, but I had no idea how to be a writer. I had no I had these kind of, I think, romantic ideas of just like writing and then figuring it out. And so that's what I did. I just started working as a waitress and bartender and then was working on writing. And then I was getting more and more frustrated. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I felt like I hadn't really lived a life in order to write. Like everything felt very trite. I was going through a lot of kind of that internal figuring who I was.
Yeah.
And then I had a lot of musicians in my orbit, and I ended up kind of culminated with me taking a drum lesson. And when I took the drum lesson, my teacher was amazing. It still is an amazing teacher, and something just clicked. I just thought, I would love to be collaborating with people in art. Writing is so solitary, and I was just so getting weary of that. And wow, with music, you can work with other people, you can play with other people. And it all came back to me of how much I loved that as a kid, my little group of people writing little songs together and like doing all of these things. And so it just really quickly, and then drums, I just had a facility for it. It just became something I really wanted to do really quickly. And so, yeah, it happened really fast. Yeah.
That's interesting. That, and I was going to ask it, did it draw from any of those early on musical experiences that made you want to go in that direction?
Yeah.
Um, what was the thing that was really the draw to drums versus piano, flute, or any of the other things that you had already learned how to do?
I think it was honestly, I think I just found the right teacher.
Okay.
I Because the way that he described it to me, I just got it. He would say, "This is what it is," and I would just be able to do it. And my boyfriend of the time, who I was living with, he was a recording engineer. He's from Detroit, so I spent a lot of
Oh,
time
cool.
in Detroit too. But he was a recording engineer, so I was spending a lot of time in recording sessions with him while he was working, and starting to understand how music is put together. And he was a guitarist, and we lived in a place where we could have a little music room. So we set up. We had got a drum kit together and set up drums, and he would teach me things. He would say, when I play this riff, play this, and then I would play that. And so he was teaching me a lot of stuff, and I was playing with him. And then I was having drum lessons as well. And so the drums, it just made sense to me. And when I started playing drums, I realized like, oh, I'm actually really mathematic. Like I think like time is like in blocks. Like I see time as visual blocks in
Okay.
space, right? And it makes sense to me. Like time makes sense. How you subdivide time, it
Yeah.
just the math of it made sense to me. And
Right.
yeah, so I don't know, it just made sense to me. Yeah.
That's interesting as well because as we talked about your teachers in high school and throughout junior high as well, nurturing that within,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Nurturing that element and putting it to you and in front of you in a
Mm-hmm.
way that is just instinctually natural.
Gosh, I just feel like teachers are they're worth their weight in gold, right? The
Yeah.
person who tells you how to do something that you just understand they say it in the right way.
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky in my life that I've had teachers in everything that I've done who've been able to do that. And I just think teachers should be the highest paid people. I mean, honestly, we have it so inside out in this society. Like they're so important, you know.
So many things are inside out
I
backwards.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's very
I
strange.
know. I know.
Yeah, the teacher, and two, it's not a broad painted spectrum, but there are some that just go there, want to do the job, and then just go back home.
Yeah,
Um, they don't have that natural instinct to nurture. But
that's
the
right.
one, but the ones that do, Oh my word. They make all
Yeah.
kinds of difference.
Such a difference in people's lives. My best friend was a high school teacher, and she taught ninth grade, and I would be like, God, how can you do that? Like, kids are so like, I don't know, kids are difficult. And
Same here.
she's and she was like, oh, but I just love them at that age because they're starting to form their real opinions. And she just loved that about them. She loved them. She loved how, and when she retired, and the kids who said the changes that she made in their lives. I mean, it's just what a profound thing to have affected the world in that way. It's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
for sure.
Yeah.
The one thing that I found fascinating, the way that you described how you see notes in music, you see it as blocks of time. And it's a very unique way of looking at it and being able to see it that way. And the reason I say that is because for me, as an artist, I see everything in the world as shapes.
Mm.
So it's all a structural thing. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing it based on those types of structure, whether it's a egg shape or it's a box, a square, or a
Mm.
circle, the way
Yeah.
everything's fitting together. It's a shape that's forming it. And ultimately it's the finalized piece. But I've always found that interesting when I find somebody else who has a unique way of looking at what they're doing in relation to shapes, and the way that
Yeah.
you're seeing it as blocks of time, and the
Yeah.
way math is working out in blocks.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm so admiring of people who have that visual ability, that to be able to be an artist, a visual artist. I'd have none of that. So I'm really impressed by that. But yeah, the idea of seeing shapes, that's really exciting to think about. Yeah.
I want to just reframe what you just said for you.
Yeah.
You have the ability to take music, sound, and tone and paint
Mm. Mm-hmm.
with that tool.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just highlight that for you, because just because it's not paint, color, and pastels, you're creating in a colorful way in and of itself, especially for those who see musical tone as color,
Yeah, I know. Isn't that neat?
right?
Yeah, I know. Isn't that great? I love thinking about that. Yeah, it's funny when you think about your senses, right? And I think about the strongest senses that I have. Like, I think visual might be the lowest for me. When I was, which is why I'm always so admiring of people who have that artistic
Yeah,
talent,
yeah,
right? When I was taking that sewing class, it was really interesting because that you're structuring things, and I'd never done that before. And I realized, like, oh, I've never thought about how things were constructed. And
right.
then I started thinking, I've never thought about, like, I've never really paid attention to clothing, right? Like, until paying attention to clothing. And then I realized I've never really been looking at things. Like, what have I been looking at? And I remember somebody talking to me about drawing, and I was like, I don't know how you draw things out of your head and it looks like something. And they were saying, well, when you draw something, imagine you're touching the edge of it, right? You're like, your hand is on the paper, but you're touching the edge of what you're drawing. And it was like this huge moment for me, like, oh, like, it's funny, like my visual sense. And then I think, okay, well, what are my strongest senses? And I think my strongest sense, honestly, is like smell. And when I say smell, it's not just smell, but it's like atmosphere, like the
Mhm. Yeah,
feeling of the atmosphere. Like, I can remember rooms that I was in, and I won't tell you what the chair looked like, but I can tell you what the light was like and what the feeling of being in the room, what it smelled like.
yeah,
Smell, like, I don't even know if it's odor, but it's more just the smell of the atmosphere of it. And then sound, and so it's a very intuitive way rather than a very practical way, right?
Yes.
of witnessing the world. Yeah.
Was starting to learn drums and how music is put together and the way it's structured. Did you start to see things open up for you in a different way compared to your writing and storytelling from that perspective?
It definitely was. Music was so important to me when I was a kid. Mostly it was a connection with my father, right? And, I grew up in a room that was kind of like the bass trap, so that when my dad would start playing music in the mornings on the weekends, I would listen to the bass. I could only hear the bass line and I would be trying to figure out what song it was, right? So kind of
Okay.
early on, I learned how to separate the
Yeah.
sounds of some. So when I started learning about music, I felt like it made a lot of sense to me. I feel like I'd already been kind of listening to music a little bit in that way. And also my ex, because he was so passionate about recording, we would lay awake for hours and he would explain to me like how a speaker works and how it hits the eardrum and then what happens when the eardrum, you know what I mean, like frequencies and sound waves and
Yeah.
and tones and stuff like that. I just got such an education from him. And so in a way it was kind of like writing where, when you learn something early on and
Mhm.
you're really passionate about it early on, there are things that you learn as a child that as an adult you're like, well, yeah, everybody knows that. I mean, that's like we don't even think about knowing it. We just know it, right? I mean, that's kind of how writing is for me. Like I just know what makes a good sounding sentence, right? I just know. I know what's right. And I can't really tell you where I learned that. I just knew it. And for music, I think because those were really formative years, my early 20s, I feel like I was still in that time where I'm absorbing information so fast that I ended up kind of learning it in the same way. When I started playing drums, it was interesting because, because I was older, I was actively deciding to learn them rather than being a kid and just kind of falling into it. I could really say, okay, these are the things I most want to learn. This is the kind of drummer I most want to be. Whereas as a kid, you're not thinking that way. You're just
Right.
playing whatever's in front of you. So I was a lot more thoughtful about learning, which is a benefit, I think, to learning an instrument later in life. You can say, okay, I really want to be able to swing because there's music I love swings a lot, and I really want to play powerfully because some of these favorite drummers play powerful, you know what I mean? Like, and how do I get to do that and then actively pursue learning that?
Right.
So it's a different way of developing, I think, as a musician. So I don't know. That was a lot of convoluted stuff. I don't know if that answered your
No,
question.
that's all right. The that leads me to this question of were you starting to be able to get a sense of experiencing the world of what you wanted to once you left California?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. New York City, moving there at
Yeah.
21 years old. I mean, it's like,
Right.
you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the world and, how to make things work and
Yeah.
what works, what doesn't work, making a lot of goofy mistakes and thankfully getting through it, unscathed for the most part. And learning that there are many, 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 many ways of seeing the world. And I I'm a big fan of cities. I've lived in cities since I moved to New York City. I live in San
Okay.
Francisco now, which is, a small city, but it's still, an urban environment. And
Right.
I love the fact that, in New York City, you're sitting on a train with people speaking 7 different languages and
Yeah.
people from every walk of life, and everybody's working to do their thing, and they're working in tandem with everybody else working to do their thing, and it works. Yeah, I'm very admiring of humanity for being able to make that happen. Yeah.
A lot of cultural flavor.
A lot of cultural flavor, a lot of philosophical flavor, a lot of one thing I think that was really helpful, a couple things I learned early on was like nobody's looking at you. You get to live your life outside of judgment, right? Because it's like, especially in New York, it's like, okay, am I going to be the prettiest person in New York? No. Am I going to be the tallest person? Am I going to be the smartest person? Am I going to be the most accomplished person? Am I going to be the dumbest person? Am I going to be the jerkiest
Right.
person? You know, it's like, no, I'm just me. And there's no judgment around that. It's just, I just get to be myself and follow my path and see what's most important to me. And that was very freeing for me. I grew up, you know, in Southern California, but I grew up in a place where everybody kind of looked the same, everybody kind of acted the same, and there was a lot of anybody who stepped kind of out of line. There was a lot of focus on people who weren't toeing the line, and
Right.
I think that can be the same in many small suburban communities. So I felt that like weight of constriction. And in New York, I felt free to be myself.
That's an interesting perspective as well, which I think is another element of who you are that's very fascinating because a lot of times creatives that are moving into that environment are very self-conscious and they
Mm,
don't see it from that perspective of I can just be me.
mm,
They feel as if they're stepping into that and they're conscious of
mm,
every single thing that may come across their path that could be perceived as something negative, something downgrading, especially from the art perspective.
yeah, yeah,
Artists entering New York City is like you're entering the cauldron.
that's right.
You're
That well,
stepping
that's a little different because that's an established community that
right.
we try to break into, right? And I
Yes.
can see where that would be really difficult. I have a good friend who's 80 now who moved to New York, you know, in the early 70s, and he was like, yeah, I was, the work I was doing at that time was trying to fit in so that I could be in, you
Right.
know, that thing. But for me, it was a big benefit that I started playing music late. Like if I was a drummer and I moved there when I was 21 years old, I would have been trying to meet all of the people in the music community and trying to prove myself, right?
Yes.
Proving
Yeah.
myself. For me, because I started so late, by the time I started, everybody had been playing at least 10 years, if not 15.
Right.
And they were already professional at what they were doing. If they were living in New York, they were trying to get paid to do it.
Yeah.
And so when I played, it was just like this bonus, like, oh, people are going to come and see me play. This is awesome. And I don't have anything to prove because I'm going to be the worst person on any stage. I've been playing the least amount of time. So, like, I'm worse than everybody on any stage. And it took me a long time to get to even move out of that feeling that, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be the infant on stage. And so, but it was very freeing. I had nobody to compete with but myself. Like when you know that you're going in and you're like at the lowest, who am I going to prove? What am I going to prove? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's nothing to prove. All I can prove is like I can actually play the song. Okay, great.
Yeah.
You did it, right? You accomplished it. So
For sure.
yeah, yeah, it's funny. Yeah,
You mentioned that with your boyfriend at the time, you had some opportunity to come to Detroit as well.
yeah,
And Detroit has a whole different style of musical history
I know.
compared to New York.
Yeah.
When you had the opportunity to see the contrast or the differences in each one of those environments, how did that affect you?
Well, in Detroit, I mean, we were really going and visiting his family, and so it wasn't like we were in any kind of music scene at that
Okay.
time. And
Okay.
you know, he had studied engineering at one of the big studios there, so he had worked with a lot of the
Gotcha.
great recording engineers who are is there. I can't remember the woman's name. It was a particular woman who was a really famous recording engineer who, you know, recorded all of the great R&B Motown people. And
Hmm.
he would kind of apprentice with her and learn from her. So I knew the Detroit music from those stories, really. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Once you're getting into playing and performing and you're starting to feel like you're slipping being into your groove of doing that. Has the spiritual side of things started to take root more so at that point in time, or did that come a little bit later where you started to
Yeah.
really delve into it?
Yeah. So I went to my first 10-day silent meditation retreat right around the time I started playing drums. It
Okay.
was really similar, like a similar time period. Obviously, I was searching for things, right?
Yes.
And I had been studying Zen for a little while, going to the Zen temple there in the East Village for a while, and learning how to meditate and reading a lot. And then I went to that first 10-day meditation retreat, and I had kind of a big kind of spiritual opening when I was there.
Okay.
And that just kind of, I didn't really understand it at the time,
All right.
but I just figured that everybody experienced that when they meditated so much. And so I just, it kind of set me on a path that was going to be a big part of my life. Um,
Okay.
and that practice would be a part of my life. Once I started playing on the road and stuff, the practice went along the side, but I still was very able to kind of access that place, that internal place of silence and stillness a lot of the time. But it really was just this thing that was just an aspect of my life while the rest of my life was out in the world and playing in metal bands and rock and roll and all of that. Yeah, so it was something that I just kind of pursued when I had downtime and thought a lot about, read a lot about. But
Okay.
yeah, I saw it as a separate aspect of myself that didn't really need to be shared. As
Gotcha.
time has gone on, I've kind of realized how much playing music and my spiritual life has the same goal and has the same purpose, and
Yeah.
is all one thing. We're looking for the stillness within ourselves. We're looking for the stillness within the chaos of a rock and roll show where I'm, in my center, like centered in myself and
Yeah.
allowing my music to move through me. And it's the same place that I look for when I'm sitting in meditation. It's that silent place that is at the center of myself. And as I deepen into that, over time, more and more and more and more and more, I see it in every aspect of my life. And sitting behind the drums, I realize that there is a spiritual element of me playing drums. And the more I read about drums and women's connection with drums and drumming, I realize that this connection I have to drums might go beyond me.
Yes. Yeah. Very much. There's a stark contrast between hard rock and metal and the calm of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You've already described that it for you it's an instant ability to mesh the two.
Mm-hmm.
For most that are out there, how is that not always contradictory?
Yeah, I think, when we talk about music, we talk about, a lot of musicians will say that what they're playing is silence, right? And
Mm,
that music, the notes we play, is accentuating the real silence that's present in music, right? Like silence
okay.
is another voice in music. And
Yeah.
I love thinking about that.
Sure. Yeah.
And we can think about that in any kind of music, and in any kind of, I mean, any guitar solo, right? Kerry King's guitar solo in Slayer is gonna, it has it the way he plays with silence makes it what it is, right? I think that we think one's loud and one's quiet, right? Now, having sat for 10 days in a silent meditation retreat where I've taken a vow of silence and I'm not speaking, I'm not communicating in any way, and I'm just listening to the inside of my voice, I have heard things louder there than I've ever heard.
Oh,
What is
wow.
spoken inside of my voice
Yeah.
has been louder than any amplified music I've ever heard. It's been loud, it's been painful, it's been judgmental, it's been chaotic. It has been like within us is
Right.
as loud as we could ever be, right? And that is what we're looking to accept, that it's present, allow it to be, allow it to pass through, see what's there, see what is there, see what it's showing us, see what it's teaching us there. And so me being able to sit on a noisy stage in front of 1,500 people while amplified guitars are screaming in the background, and I've got a monitor here that's blowing my head off, and I'm
Hmm.
hitting the drums as hard as I possibly could. There is complete stillness and silence within the center of that in order to make that happen. There's a stillness within each heart in the room that is allowing the music to come through them and to come around, that is connecting to all of the other hearts that are all directed in one way. They're all looking in one direction. All their ears are tuned to one place. It's like we're having one experience, and there's silence in that. There's stillness in that. And that's that beautiful vibration of love energy. I think that's at the base of all things.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I was watching a couple of the videos on YouTube yesterday,
Mm,
um, getting ready for this, and I could sense that in
mm,
just watching you in
mm,
those
mm,
videos. It was very fascinating for me because it was as if there was this chute that would just funnel down right over top of you there in it. You
mm,
were you were amplifying everything that was taking place with the other three members, and you were setting the pace and all that.
mm,
But visually, I was just seeing this funnel that was going up
mm,
uh, into
beautiful.
the etheric realm of you
Mm.
and what you were doing.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. When you're into working with these other musicians, are you finding it as compatible as what you had in high school with those other writers working on those publications?
Well, the publications, I don't know that I felt that as much, but the place that I did feel that kind of creative spark connection was really when I was in elementary school. I had these couple friends, and we used to write little songs and little plays, right? We
Okay,
called them
cool.
operettas, right?
Yeah,
We create these little, like that's what we do at recess, right? We'd be writing little songs and we'd be writing things and performing them, and it was just this free flow of bouncing things, like, that thing where you're finishing each other's sentences and this thing is being created, right? That's when it's good, right? When you feel that just everybody is like focused on the same thing, and there's that energy of enthusiasm around what it is that you're creating. And I've been really fortunate in my life to have one band, the original band that I was in New York, where we wrote the songs together, and that kind of enthusiasm was really present for that band.
okay.
And I mean, in Zeparella, we're playing somebody else's music, so there are moments of excitement where we're kind of figuring things out, we're getting things to sound good, and we're really happy and all of that. It's a different kind of creative energy, though, because we're not actually creating the music. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you come across these other ladies and the opportunity to become part of that band?
Zeparella?
Yes.
Yeah. So Gretchen and I, the guitarist, Gretchen Mann, and I were working in an AC/DC band.
Okay.
Um, I was in the band that I was talking about before, this band from New York called Bottom, and we toured all the time. And when I finally got off the road for a short amount of time, I was like, looking in the paper, like, it'd be nice to have a band that I could play when I'm not on tour, play with. And so I saw an advertisement for an AC/DC band. So I was like, oh, I've never learned anybody else's songs, right? Because
Mhm.
at that point, I started playing drums, and then I went into this band and went on tour. So I didn't have, a lot of experience learning somebody else's music. And, in a tribute band, you have to learn it exact. And I'd never done that. So I thought, oh, this is going to be a great, lesson for me. So I joined that AC/DC band, and then Gretchen joined a little while later, and we became friends in the band. And then that band wasn't, my other band stopped being on the road as much, and I wanted to play more. And so I'd had this idea for starting a Zeppelin band a while back, and I asked Gretchen if she wanted to start this band. So we started that band, started Zeparella. My bass player from the original band joined. I was like, well, I have to do it with her. Like, she has to be in the band.
Okay.
And then we found our singer through a mutual friend. I told him, like, hey, I'm starting the Zeppelin band. He's like, I know this great singer. I think that she would be really good for it. That's Anna Christina, who sings with us now. She left for a little while in between, but she's back. She was the original singer, and Nellie, and our bass player now, Holly West. She's again, a mutual friend of Gretchen's recommended Holly when our previous bass player decided to take a break. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually word of mouth. Yeah.
Nice. With the original band that you're working with and touring and different things
Hmm.
like that, did you guys have the opportunity to have label spotlights and stuff like that? Or were you on a label or was it all independent touring?
Yeah, we were on a label. We were on Man's Ruin Records at the end, which was a big label out of San Francisco. And then, let's see, the first record, we had three records. The first record was that we did it ourselves, and then the second record I think was Man's Ruin. I think that's how it went. I can't remember. Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, Man's Ruin was the record label.
And with Zeparella, are you guys strictly independent in what you're doing?
Yeah, actually, we did have a record label put out our second, maybe it was our, yeah, it was our second record. This label out of Denver called What Are Records. They put out our second record, but and then we ended that relationship. We've just done it ourselves since then. Yeah. Zeparella tends to sell records at shows, and then our fans online. But having a tribute band on a record label is tricky because the band isn't really making that much money, right? We're paying mechanical royalties, and
Yep.
so that it's really a kind of a labor of love. We just put out a vinyl album, and it's our fifth album, and it really was it's just a labor of love. I mean, honestly. I'm like, I want to do a vinyl. I mean, Zeppelin should do at least one beautiful vinyl album just for posterity. So that's kind
Right.
of
Right.
just why we do it. Most tribute bands don't do that, but we just, I don't know, why not?
Well, I think, and also too, the atmosphere in the music industry is really opening up again to vinyl. Um,
Yeah, right. It's so fun. Yeah, yeah.
I think it has its own nostalgic reemergence. It's
And it
taking
just
place.
sounds good. And it feels like, for all the chaos from the world, I feel like people are really being drawn to things that are a little more thoughtful, like,
For sure.
and listening to a vinyl album. My husband is this, crazy vinyl collector. So we have just the greatest vinyl collection. And, every night at dinner, like, we listen to a vinyl album, and it's nice to just shut everything off and just have that thing where you listen to half of it and then you turn it over and you listen to the other, it's like,
Yeah.
it's such a nice, thoughtful thing to do. I think people are looking for those moments that we can kind of just unplug and just listen, do something that feels real in a way.
Right. With all of the music that you're doing and have done, at what point did you start doing holistic work in terms of energy work and or the other types of therapeutic modalities that you stepped into?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm really bad at time. So I'm good at time in one way, and I'm really bad at timeline, I should say. I'm really bad at
Gotcha.
timelines.
Okay.
So I might say 10 years, and I don't know, maybe it was 12 or maybe it was 7. I don't know. But a while ago, several years ago, I decided to, well, first of all, I guess I should preface this by saying when I was 22 years old, I met a woman who became a great mentor of mine throughout my
Okay.
life.
All right.
And she's a spiritual teacher and developed a energy healing technique and is a profound, I'm fortunate to have this profound human in my life. And she's been kind of a guidepost for me. And so we fell out of touch for a few years, but then we reconnected maybe about 15 years ago, I would say, 18 years ago, and she'd kind of come into this new understanding of spirituality, and so I started kind of studying with her, and
Yeah.
and she really was guiding me and teaching me, and a lot of stuff was opening up a lot for me spiritually. And then I decided that I wanted to understand. I was learning a lot of stuff in Hinduism. I was learning a lot of Buddhist stuff, some Sufi stuff, and I wanted to know where everything fit together. I realized that
Yes.
I had been doing a practice in meditation, a Vipassana practice and meditation, and I didn't know what the difference was between that kind of meditation and other kinds of meditation in Buddhism. Right? I was like, I've been just blindly doing this practice, but I have no idea where it sits in the pantheon of stuff.
Right.
So I ended up listening to a lot of lectures by this teacher, Robert Thurman. He's one of the leading, actually Uma Thurman's dad,
Okay.
but he's one of the leading Eastern religion scholars in the country.
Oh wow.
And
I didn't.
yeah, and he has a podcast. He was like, one of the first people in America to become a Buddhist monk. He studied with like the Dalai Lama for a while and ended up becoming this like monk for a while.
Mm.
Um, anyway, he had this podcast, and so I listened to all of these lectures just because I was like, I need to figure this stuff out, like where everything sits. And in
Yeah.
listening to it, I realized that he was affiliated with a school in New York called the Nalanda Institute, and they did a 2-year program teaching Buddhist psychology. And so I was like, I'm going to take that. So I did that. And then from there, somebody in the class was like, I'm studying with this woman in Berkeley, and she's teaching this kind of healing modality that involves shamanism and Buddhism. And so I went and I took that course, and I ended up getting certified in a whole bunch of ways and became a minister, and it kind of all followed along. So my education it was this very natural kind of course that I was on. And one thing that I really realized was that I love being a musician, but I really have this desire in my heart to help people in a more practical way.
Yeah.
I understand the benefit of art and it's important in life, but I also really I want to help. I always want to help people. And so through learning all of that, I have a practice now where I help people. I'm a spiritual counselor in these different modalities. So I work with people, who have PTSD or a lot of early childhood trauma, and we approach it from like a holistic spiritual way. Yeah.
Yes. I know from my own personal experience of dealing with depression, anxiety, things like that, and being in traditional Western medicine for 25 plus years, if not more. When I came across my friend, mentor, lady that I work with for healing, her name's Marilyn Edwards, and she's in St. Augustine, Florida. Uh, when I started working with her, I grew exponentially in
Mm,
terms of my healing process
mm,
in relation to traditional Western medicine, psychiatry, and cognitive therapy. Now, granted, I had two fantastic ladies that I work with. My psychiatrist was phenomenal. My cognitive therapist was phenomenal. And I say that because of the fact that they were willing to always allow me to continue to search, to
mhm,
look, and try to other things.
mhm,
A lot of times, and it was just out of the simple fact that they couldn't answer a question that I had or didn't have any explanation of why I was even asking this question based on
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts. And so they were absolutely willing to allow me to go out and explore
Mm-hmm.
and find what else might answer those questions. And from their perspective, it was like, yeah, just come back. We'll talk about it. It'll be
Yeah.
something that we can learn from.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was very fortunate there. But in terms of working with holistic healers and non-traditional modalities, I was able to see a lot more growth a lot quicker and
Mm-hmm.
found healing a lot more, to the point where it's allowed me to be able to do this type of
Yeah.
work and having these conversations, which, as I mentioned earlier on, that I would have never guessed I would have been doing this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah.
no way even
Right.
close to being on my scope of things I want to do. Um, but
Right.
I find it very beneficial if somebody's willing to be open to it, to the
Mm.
process. I think it's hugely a benefit for
Yeah.
individual healing. You're able to get into certain things that traditional medicine doesn't always consider.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look at potentially healing it.
Mm-hmm.
They recognize that it may be there if we're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it from a terms of a trauma. They recognize that it's there, it's been there, it's affected you, but
Mm-hmm.
there really is no component in traditional medicine that tries to heal and help you heal from
Tries
the
to unravel it. Tries to
yes.
unravel it. Yeah. Yeah. The tools aren't there because I think a lot of the times, I mean, in the training that I have, there's this idea that there's an issue, which is almost in like what we call the etheric field, right?
Correct.
Like the field around us, right? And that issue comes down and then it comes into our emotional field, right?
Mhm.
And then from there, if we don't deal with it in our emotional field, then it goes into our mental field. And I might have that backwards. It might be mental first and then emotional. But it's like then we start making up stories about it,
Right.
about the issue in our mind. And it starts to create its own pattern, right,
Mhm.
of energy in our mental field. And once that starts happening, then it kind of moves into the physical realm, right? And so there's this idea that like a physical symptom, actually, if we can trace it back to the origin, right, of the
Mhm.
etheric field, which is the spiritual field,
Yeah.
and address it from that aspect, then we might be able to actually unravel that energetic pattern that's causing the issues. Now, I want to be very careful because there are some people who extrapolate from that it's something that we did is the reason we got sick, right? That it's our own fault that we got sick. And I
No,
don't
no,
take that. I don't see that. I just see this
I
as
don't
we're
need.
talking about our own specific experience and how that affects us, how it sinks into our body, it sinks into our mental thing. And we're trying to let go of these patterns that have been dealt with. And when we talk about healing on the spiritual level, what we're talking about is being able to, through the process of the session, be able to connect with that quiet stillness within ourselves and ask from that place outside of the mental realm, outside
Mhm.
of the emotional realm, outside of the stories we've told ourselves, inside of that heart space, what message is it that we're to learn here? And
Right.
um, and that can be very scary, and that's why some of these techniques are developed. And one thing that I use is the sound of a drum, right, to induce a meditative state, because they found that the repetitive sound of a frame drum, it enables that. I think it's the theta waves, or it's the brain waves that creates that very calm meditative state. It's like it quiets the mind to listen to that,
Yeah.
that that sound. And so when we can quiet the mind and get out of the stories we're telling ourselves about why we're feeling bad, we can really reach that deeper level of ourselves and say, what is this really about? Where is this? What is this energy around this thing that we're dealing with? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's a thing that has stuck throughout history as a
Mm-hmm.
form of being able to connect you to a place of, e- even as you expressed it, shifting into your heart space. That drumming has a way of synchronizing with the heart as well. And absolutely, for many Native American cultures, drumming is considered, tapping into that heart space. And it's the thing that allows you to move into a different perceptive realm
Mm-hmm.
in order to
That's
start
right.
looking at things. And
That's
so,
right.
again, from my perspective, it's very fascinating that you, as a drummer, are allowing that to move over into the healing work that you're doing as well, and the connections of that. And even going back in time to being that little girl who's searching and wanting to dive into these different things to learn more, to find out
Mm-hmm.
more. And
Mm-hmm.
then fast forward, now you're delving into realms that are absolutely finding more and searching for more.
That's right.
I
Yeah. I
think,
want to,
go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Oh,
go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I want to say before we get too far away from this, I do want to say that I think that that the psychology, going to therapy, going to session, I think that's highly useful as well. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
I don't want to, for your listeners, I don't want them to think that I'm discounting that because I spent, years in therapy and it was incredibly helpful. And especially in times of crisis,
Yeah,
it was like that's really what I needed at that point was to be with people who understood kind of the crisis that I was going through. So, I definitely don't want to discount it. And I think that it's, if we see the pattern in each of our systems, it makes sense to deal with the mental with the mental and the emotional
right,
with the emotional and spiritual. I get that. And so what I like to do in my life is, if I have something wrong with my physicality, I go to my doctor, I go to my acupuncturist, I go to my energy healer, I go to
right.
my
Yeah,
my depth of
yeah,
gnosis person. I get all my bases. Like,
yeah,
it's all manifestation. Like, why do I want to discount one thing? Like, I'm definitely not somebody who's like not going to go and and go to my doctor and say, I broke my
yeah.
arm. It's like, but I might heal it faster because I'm going to these other people. But
Right, right.
yeah, yeah. So I do like to kind of be on the record saying like I like it all.
No, I'm with you
Yeah,
100%. And
yeah,
I think a lot of the previous episodes, the listeners will see that it's been a consistent scenario from my perspective in presenting it in different ways, that it's always complementary.
yeah, yeah. That's
It
right.
doesn't have to be one or, it can be and.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
Can be the connection of both and integrate together as
Yeah,
complementary.
that's
Um,
right. And when you're looking at any kind of person that you're going to heal, and this especially happens in the spiritual kind of healing, the thing always to ask yourself is, am I giving my power over to this person? Am I expecting that this person, they might have answers that I can then use, but in spiritual realms, I think people get in trouble because they go see somebody and the person says, okay, let me do this. Let me heal
right.
you.
Yeah.
Let me, like, I'm the only one who can do this. And, if you stick with me, kid, you'll get healed. No, you
Yeah.
want to be with people who are saying, let me help you with what I know. Let me help you find your healing.
Right.
It's not about, where is the power here? They're empowering you rather
Yeah.
than you're not giving over power.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. With leaning into the pandemic, did
Mhm.
you find that the restriction to being able to play out. Did you see that as something that affected you uh, in a way that may have been maybe different from the way others are experiencing it?
Yeah. When the pandemic happened and I had time, that kind of time that I hadn't had in a very long time, really, really long time, I realized there was a fatigue in me that was so deep. And for the first 4 months or so, I just focused on releasing the fatigue. And
Okay.
I didn't play drums, I didn't play music, I didn't aspire to anything. I just was. And that was very healing for me. And then there came a moment I remember being in the car and I was kind of coming up over the hill and suddenly it was like I longed to hear like screaming guitar amps in my ears, you know. I started to really like, oh, I really wanted to connect and to start playing music. So I started playing music with a friend of mine. We were kind of in our own little two-person pod. And so that was really great when I, really felt that need to start creating again. But I did look out into the world and I started to feel like, oh, this is why we need to get together. This is why we need to be in groups of people together because people start to get crazy if they're not in groups of people celebrating together. This is the purpose of entertainment together, of live music and of theater and arts. And, this is the purpose is that it reminds us of our common heart. And I started to see people splintering and forgetting that. Got very distressing. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think once things started to open it back up, people were craving live music
Oh,
so
yeah.
much
So much. Yeah.
that it's probably more financially beneficial to musicians and artists right now versus even before the pandemic, just because people have been needing that.
Yeah.
They need the ability to be out, be around other people. They need that
Hmm.
music to be flowing through them, that those notes, that frequency to
Hmm.
just lift some life back up in them.
Excuse me. Yeah.
During that time, did the book From Bonham to Buddha and Back, did that start to take shape around that time or was it after?
No, that was my project during the pandemic was to get the book together. At first I thought, oh, I'll just take some of my blog posts and put them together in a book. And then I realized, no, you got to write a bunch and you got to really work on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was my project during the pandemic.
And going through that process, can you explain a little bit more of what that book entails and why that came about?
Yeah, it's so the book is 100 short pieces of writing, and it's definitely a love song to drums. And I started writing my blog when I was out on the road, and I started to realize how much my spiritual life was affecting my road life, and how much I relied on it for things like trouble that was going on the road and how I would handle difficulty, how I would handle challenges, and how, then when I go back home and I have a week off and I'm just in this meditative state, and then I go back into the road and just being able, like, I started to really see my own personal patterns and started to see how like my contemplative practice was affecting my life on the road. And so I started writing about that. And those are the first kind of pieces that I wrote. And then I had a lot of stuff that I've written over the years about, about becoming Clem, the story about becoming a drummer, the story about, some stories about my childhood. There's stuff, my dad died right as I started playing drums, so he never saw me play drums. So there's a lot written in there about him and my relationship with him, and how he really did create my musical, the music within me, and so kind of coming to terms with that with my father. And then my spiritual path, writing about what it's like to sit for 10 days in a meditation hall, and what it's like to have some of those kind of like big awarenesses that come along the way, and the lessons learned. So, there's all of these little, all the pieces of Clem, all these short pieces of Clem kind of all came together into hopefully one kind of cohesive idea about what it's like to have the interests that I have, and the passions that I have, and the path that I've been on, and how it seems incongruous, and yet actually I make all of those connections. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Very nice. Yeah, I could imagine that those aspects of the influence that your dad had early on,
Mm,
uh, with all of that musicality within the home environment, just was brought to the forefront of your mind.
that's
Um,
right.
yeah, very fascinating. This has been a wonderful story to share with the audience. I truly
Thank
appreciate
you.
you coming on.
Thank you
Um,
so much, Rich. It's been really a wonderful, deep conversation for sure.
Excellent. One of the things that I always like to do at the end of each one of these episodes is just give the audience a very kind but impactful reminder. And that is always listen to your heart, but be kind to your mind.